You're listening to Damascus Radio, the broadcasting service of the Syrian Arab Republic, and now stay tuned for the news.
Good evening once again, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our news bulletin for tonight, to be presented jointly by Basil Magdash and Rashid Haidar. The president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, has sent a cable to President Bashar al-Assad congratulating him on his victory in the recent presidential elections. Lukashenko expressed confidence that Syria will emerge victorious from the current crisis in synchronization with its counter-terrorism efforts and will stand its ground against the foreign policies. As he wished the Syrians more prosperity and peace, the Belarusian president affirmed keen interest in bolstering and deepening bilateral relations between Syria and Belarus for their common interests. The Syrian embassy in Beirut has meanwhile organized a reception for figures, delegations and activists that came to offer congratulations on the success of the presidential elections in Syria. Receiving the guests, Syria's ambassador in Lebanon, Ali Abdul Karim, has said that the high turnout for the elections and the number of people who elected President al-Assad constitutes an answer to all the skepticals and those who tried to destroy Syria from within. A delegation from Amal movement's leadership attended the reception, headed by chairman of the movement's Politburo, Jamal Hayek, in addition to a delegation from Al-Marada party, headed by cultural minister Raymond Arji, and a delegation from the Nation movement. Several independent figures and representatives of civil, syndical, economic and local activities, also attended the event. On its part, and on behalf of the Somali government and the people, the Embassy of the Federal Republic of Somalia has congratulated the Syrian people on President al-Assad's win of the presidential elections held on June the 3rd in Syria. In a statement yesterday, the embassy expressed Somalia's keenness on bolstering the fraternal ties between Somalia and Syria in the interest of the two peoples. The statement also expressed hope that the Syrian people will restore security, stability, amity and civil peace. In a relevant context, Iraqi political, cultural and social figures and bodies expressed pride over President al-Assad's win of the presidential elections. In a statement, the Iraqi bodies reiterated complete support to the Syrian people and leadership in confronting the conspiracy and foiling the enemy's scheme. Basim?
Thank you, Rashid. In Latakia, Syrian Arab Army units, in cooperation with the National Civil Defense, restored security and stability to the city of Kasab, eliminating the last gatherings of the terrorists in the area and destroying their weapons. Meanwhile, Syrian Arab Army engineering units have started dismantling the landmines and defusing the explosive devices which were planted by the armed terrorist groups in the city of Kasab. In Homs countryside, Syrian Arab Army units restored security and stability to the village of Sharshuh and the adjacent farms in the countryside after eliminating terrorist groups. A military source said that the Syrian Arab Army units targeted also terrorist gatherings in Taldo, Al-Rastan, Kisin, Al-Ghajar, Al-Amiriye, Ain Hussein, Al-Tibe, Al-Ismailil and Khan al-Shawish in Homs countryside and eliminated a number of terrorists and destroyed their criminal tools. In Aleppo, the Criminal Security Department in the Interior Ministry shut down Al-Kazara shop in Al-Aziziyeh area, which was engaged in exchanging money without license. In Idlib, Syrian Arab Army units foiled an infiltration attempt by an armed terrorist group that tried to sneak into the secure areas around the city from the side of the College of Agriculture, killing a large number of terrorists. In Deir ez-Zor, units of the Criminal Security Department seized a large quantity of stolen items, including several electric sets and house tools, arresting the leader and members of the robbing network. The Health Ministry launched today a nationwide polio vaccination campaign with the aim of making Syria polio-free as it once was. The campaign lasts until June the 19th and targets children under 5 of age to have them immunized against polio. The Health Ministry stressed the importance of synchronizing efforts to ensure that every child is immunized against polio. The Health Ministry, in cooperation with the WHO, has launched 7 polio vaccination campaigns in all provinces between October 2013 and May 2014, with 4 new campaigns being planned for June, August, October and November. An increasing number of prison inmates in provinces are being released pursuant to the Legislative Decree No. 22 for the year 2014, which granted a general amnesty on the crimes committed before June the 9th, 2014. More details are in this following report.
Attorney General of Hama Province, Ayman Dakkak, stressed that 130 inmates have been released according to the decree. Dakkak stressed that new numbers will be released during the upcoming days after studying their files. Governor of Hama Province, Ghassan Khalaf, clarified that the decree is an opportunity for inmates to go back to their normal life and play their role in society. Secretary General of Al-Ba'ath Arab Socialist Party, Hama branch, Muhammad Al-Imadi, pointed out the role of the decree in bolstering the positive and moral values, being a turning point in the life of the inmates who were included in the decree. The released persons in turn expressed happiness over this step, which asserts that the state is the real mother for all the Syrians. In Hasaka Province, Attorney General Nasser Al-Dali said that 65 inmates have been released so far in implementation of the amnesty decree. In a statement, Al-Dali pointed out that other 5 citizens benefited from the decree as they were exempted from punishment after they paid due financial accounts. Meanwhile, in Homs, Attorney General Khalid Al-Najjar said 37 inmates have been released from Homs Central Prison as per the amnesty decree.
The National Unity Convoy and Central Committee for Popular Reconciliation launched yesterday Allegiance to Syrian Families Center, which is going to provide physical and psychological treatment to members of the Syrian Arab Army. Minister of State for National Reconciliation Affairs Ali Haider stressed that the Syrian Arab Army and the national flag are national principles that no Syrian can abandon. Haider described the center as evidence of the united fabric of the Syrians as they are living a united life in their homeland, and a message that refutes the allegations of the enemies who are trying to distort the icons of Syria's sovereignty and independence. The center includes 3 departments for physical, psychological and recreational treatment, and it includes medical and sports equipment. The Syrian Counseling Center for Studies in Human Rights has urged the world states to adopt a firm stance to put an end to the supporters of the terrorist groups which are wreaking havoc in Syria and Iraq, and to reactivate the international law, especially in the field of combating terrorism. The center said in a statement yesterday, what Syria and Iraq are exposed to of terrorism and organized sabotage at the hands of the Western and Arab powers-backed extremist groups requires the world states to take a firm stand to put an end to the supporters of these groups and to activate the international law, especially in the field of combating terrorism. The center appealed to the peace-loving peoples around the world to stand in the face of the fierce attack targeting Syria and Iraq, the cradle of human civilization and the alphabet. It called for finding a formula for global cooperation to put an end to the countries that provide the killers wreaking havoc and destroying the infrastructure and humanity. More news with Basim.
Thank you very much, Rashid. The head of the Iraqi clerics group, Sheikh Khalid al-Malla, has called on the Iraqi people to side with the Iraqi army to rid their country of Takfiri terrorism, asserting that what happens now in Iraq, like in Syria, is a black terrorism. In a telephone call with Al Mayadeen TV channel today, Al-Malla clarified that the terrorism carried out by the ISIS or the Islamic State in Iraq and Sham needs all the Muslim clerics to take the right stance to protect the tolerant religion of Islam and spare the blood of the Iraqi and Syrian peoples. Meanwhile, in Iraq, 6 Iraqis were killed, including 3 soldiers, due to a terrorist attack against the volunteering center for fighting terrorism against what is called the Organization of the Islamic State of Iraq and Sham, or ISIS, to the northeastern parts of Baghdad. This comes at a time when the Iraqi air forces targeted the terrorist hideouts in the operations areas of Ninawa, Salahuddin and Samarra, and eliminated a large number of what is called the Islamic State of Iraq and Sham that belongs to Al-Qaeda terrorist organization. Iraqi sources stressed that during this operation a large number of vehicles loaded with weapons were destroyed. Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Jawad Zarif and his South African counterpart Mita Nkona Mashabane have asserted the necessity of fighting terrorism, extremism and violence in the region. They also discussed the international and regional issues to enhance international peace and security. In a joint press conference with his counterpart in Tehran, Zarif condemned the foreign interference in the area's affairs, which resulted in the spread of violence and terrorism in Syria and Iraq, saying, "We face problems due to the foreign intervention in the area, and we have to face violence, extremism and terrorism in the area and Africa." On her part, Iranian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Mardiya Afkham has stressed that Iran is against any military foreign intervention in Iraq, affirming that Iraq has the capabilities to fight terrorism and extremism. In a statement, Afkham said that we firmly believe that enhancing the national unity method in Iraq will certainly lead to containing the current terrorist crisis and will foil the conspiracies against this country. Back to you, Rashid.
Thank you, Bassem. 2 female Palestinians were injured in a chain of Israeli raids on different areas in the Gaza Strip yesterday. The Israeli forces, following the kidnapping of 3 Israelis, launched military operations in which tens of Palestinians were arrested. The Israeli spokesman announced that the Israeli occupation forces will use all necessary measures that would enable them to find the kidnapped Israelis. During 2 telephone calls, Russian President Vladimir Putin has discussed with the German Chancellor Angela Merkel and the French President François Hollande a number of issues related to the Ukrainian question. In a related issue, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has called on his U.S. counterpart John Kerry to practice some pressures on Kiev to start direct negotiations with the southeast Ukrainian representatives regarding an immediate ceasefire and providing urgent humanitarian aid to the affected citizens. Lavrov also called on Kerry to push for the Ukrainian authorities to sketch more realistic estimates of the situation and to understand that the military solution in the internal conflict is useless. Now, ladies and gentlemen, over to our final item with Bassem.
Thank you very much, Rashid. The summit of the 77 group, in addition to China, started its deliberations in the Bolivian city of Sierra or Santa Cruz de Sierra yesterday with the participation of a Syrian delegation. In the opening speech, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro focused on the importance of supporting the struggle of the Syrian people against terrorism and imperialism.
And with that item on the 77 Group Summit, we conclude our news bulletin for tonight. Thank you for listening.
Damascus Radio presents News and Views.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, to all of you. There is no need for much efforts to discover that what has been going on in the Arab arena since around 4 years only serves the Israeli enemy and the colonial West, which is led by the United States. The Western colonial countries have intended to exploit the situation in the Arab states in a successive way, starting from Tunisia to Egypt, Libya, Yemen, Iraq and Syria, with the aim of targeting the stability of these Arab countries to reach a new roadmap for the region and to tear up the historic and geographic unity of the Arab states. Such roadmap undermines the idea of the Arab nationalism once and forever to establish small, weak and fragile states on the ruins of the present Arab states, an issue which means the continuation of dividing the Arab homeland to carry out a new phase of Sykes-Picot. It is not strange to see the Israeli element or factor entering on the line of conspiracy and allying, for instance, with the terrorist gangs. After today, we will not allow anyone to accuse us that we adopt the theory of conspiracy. If what is going on over the Arab lands is not considered a conspiracy, then what is the conspiracy? Actually, the steadfastness of the Syrian people has aborted the most dangerous conspiracy the Arab exposed on in their history, an issue which will pave the way for establishing a new phase of the history and the birth of a new world that ends the era of hegemony and unipolarity.
That was news and views from Damascus Radio. Damascus Radio presents Syrian Local Press Review.
Hello dear listeners, to all of you. The Syrian deal is issued today in Damascus highlighted the following headlines and in his items. President of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, sent a cable to President Bashar al-Assad congratulating him for his victory in recent presidential vote. On behalf of the Somali government and people, the Embassy of the Federal Republic of Somalia congratulates the Syrian people on President Bashar al-Assad's win of the presidential elections held on June 3rd in Syria. More prison inmates released in provinces according to amnesty decree. Minister of National Reconciliation, no Syrian can abandon Syrian flag or national principles. Deputy Foreign and Expatriates Minister Faisal al-Miqdad says the West policies have been uncovered during the crisis in Syria and the reality of their moral degradation was clearly shown whether in Syria or in Ukraine. The Syrian embassy in Beirut organizes a reception for figures, delegations and activities that came to offer congratulations on the success of the presidential elections in Syria. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani affirms performance of Western states and their allies in Syria pours in the interest of terrorists, expressing concern over the phenomenon of terrorism, violence and extremism in the region. The Syrian daily Al-Thawra wrote in its editorial under the title "Who Made It That the War in Syria Has Reached to Denmark," according to a Danish newspaper, which asserted that terrorism reached to Denmark, bouncing back from Syria through the return of the European terrorists to their countries, carrying out the acts they did against the Syrian people and state. It is strange after this news to see that some influential capital ignore this coming danger and still support the extreme organization in Syria and Iraq and facilitate their movement and supply them by all means to practice their daily crimes in service of the West's monopolistic interests. Those Western sides who ignored that their administrations established branches to Al-Qaeda and used them in Afghanistan and later on in Iraq and today in Syria, Libya and Yemen have disregarded that the American policy in the past 2 decades was the one which produced terrorism and extremism and the creative chaos despite its claim of combating and eliminating them. Guess till when the United States will keep on deceiving its people and the world peoples in such issues.
That was a review of the Syrian local press issued in Damascus this morning.
Damascus Radio presents a weekly program prepared by Afaf Nagosi and read by Lena Sykes. With the company of sound engineer Suhail Khouri. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. In our program of this week, some Arab newspapers and some writers' views on the most important topics. Lebanese newspaper Al-Bina confirmed that the victory of President Bashar al-Assad with his resistant people devotes a new beginning in the process of aggression, allies defeat, and opens the way for transitions and bargainings. The Americans should put into their account a new emerging element, which is the role of the Syria's regional and its crucial hinge in the changing balances within an alliance who has proved cohesion and harshness that globally contains Russia, China, and the BRICS countries, Iran and Hezbollah in the region. The paper added whether France Hollande expresses its horror with words that represents a new scandal of foreign affairs minister and a hate face in internal home and abroad. So what about other details in the aggression's allies countries on Syria, and which are asked to adopt with the new realities, as Saud al-Faisal had been done in his speech to the Russian leader about the transition to accept the logic of political solution in Syria, who is threatened in losing his job with the completion of the alliance defeat, and who was the most outstanding figure in his arrogance. Palestinian newspaper Al-Manar quoted some diplomatic circles that there is a worry by the French leadership at the Elysee Palace on the imminent danger posed by the French nationals who are fighting in the ranks of the terrorist gangs in Syria and who wish to return to France large stored of ideas of extremism and high capabilities for using weapons and the preparation of explosive devices. This worry stems mainly from the fact that the French government had approved a lot of support for the terrorist gangs who are fighting the Syrian state. Among these support are providing arms and allowing the French of Arab origin to join the terrorist gangs in Syria and to fundraising for the interest of those gangs without any restrictions by the French authorities. The Lebanese journal Al-Akhbar, and by the writer Sami Klip, said that the Iranian-American relation has entered a stage of major transitions. The writer said that the meeting between Washington and Iran in Geneva to discuss the Iranian nuclear file and then the meeting of the Iranians with the Russians in 2 consecutive days also means that Tehran has imposed itself as the first party in the international equation for the Middle East. This equation pays Iran's allies to feel confidence of high self-esteem, to talk about the victory of their axis, the mad transformation of the 5+1 nuclear negotiations with Iran to a stage of direct negotiations is a very significant event in the region. According to the same writer, we are facing a massive shift in the Middle East and may face the redrawing of new alliances and new roles, which will soon show reflections on more than one file, atop of them Syria and Iran files. Emirates newspaper Al-Khalij talked about the Egyptian scene and what waits it after the Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has sworn in. The paper wrote that what is awaiting Egypt is difficult tasks, where President al-Sisi has settled in the hearts and minds of the Egyptians as the savior who is able to lift Egypt of its crises. So the Egyptian people has given him unprecedented confidence that is reflected in the polls and by a large backing. According to the paper, Sisi does not have a magic stick which will make Egypt out of its economic, security and social crisis during days or months, but by the work, the will, the confidence and the determination the achievement can be achieved. Emirates newspaper Al-Bina also talked about Egypt, which had elected a new president, and said the word came to Egypt on the day of the inauguration of its president for all Egyptians. Egypt today is on the verge of a new phase which will try to draw a new future. According to the paper, the electing of Egypt's new president means that there is no place for terrorism, extremism, radicalism, and narrow-minded in it. Damascus Radio presents Arab Press Radio, a weekly program prepared by Afaf al-Nabusi and read by Yamna Said. With the company of sound engineer Suhail Khoury.
You're still tuned to the broadcasting service of the Syrian Arab Republic, Damascus Radio. Before signing off with the Syrian national anthem, here is another look at the news summary. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko sends a cable to President Bashar al-Assad congratulating him on his victory in the recent presidential elections. The Syrian embassy in Beirut organizes a reception for figures, delegations and activists that came to offer congratulations on the success of the presidential elections in Syria. The Federal Republic of Somalia congratulates the Syrian people on President al-Assad's win of the presidential elections held on June the 3rd in Syria. The Health Ministry launched a nationwide polio vaccination campaign which aims at making Syria polio-free as it was once before. An increasing number of prison inmates in provinces are being released pursuant to the Legislative Decree number 22 for the 2014, which grants a general amnesty on the crimes committed before June the 9th, 2014. And Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Jawad Zarif and his South African counterpart Mite Nokna Meshabanda asserts the necessity of fighting terrorism, extremism and violence in the region. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of our English transmission for tonight. You can join us again tomorrow at the same time on the same frequencies. Until then, this is Damascus Radio with all our staff members wishing you all the best and have a very good night.